I am here with the one and only Greg Machos of GMC Hoops as we get ready, or we are ready, for the high school basketball season. As you know, it's definitely going to be a different year. A lot of things, a lot of interchangeable parts, and a lot of pieces moving in and out. So I wanted to get Greg's opinion on a couple of things and go forward. So, Greg, first thing that I will toss at you here is I'm curious. I want to get other people's opinion on this. But in a situation where you have no GMC tournament this year and no state playoffs this year, what do you feel like these guys are that put on the uniform? What do you feel like they're playing for? Is it just for pride? Is it just for, the love of the game? What do you feel like they're playing for this year?
Well, I think for some it's just getting out there to play, especially if you're a senior. I think it means a lot to get out there and play this year more than anything, because it's kind of a reward for being in the program the last 3 years. So I think for the seniors, that's a big, it's still a big deal. And also, I mean, there will be a GMC kind of invitational tournament, like pods, kind of like what they did in football. So that first week of March, I believe. So I don't think we're completely wiped out in terms of postseason games. But yes, obviously, there won't be a GMC tournament in the classic sense or any state playoffs in the classic sense. But again, you're going to be playing for pride. I think teams are really going to. I think if you're playing this year, you probably want to make it a goal to try to play in every game that you can, just so that you can say, in a sense, that was an accomplishment. Especially in light of all the obstacles. To be able to play in every game, I think would be a pretty great accomplishment. I mean, there were a few football teams that were able to do that. I know Bernard's up in Somerset County in the one division of the Big Central Football Conference. They managed to play 9 games, as well as New Providence. So for those teams, that had to be an incredible accomplishment, considering everything that they had to get through, rescheduling games, staying away from certain things like, certain social situations, and, just staying disciplined and just being able to ride through all the obstacles of not only your team, but the other team that you had originally scheduled to play. So I think for a team to be able to play every game in this type of scenario, I think is a pretty good accomplishment and worth trying to get through the schedule. But for the most part, yeah, I guess the kids are playing for pride. But I know that we've talked about things like this in the past in terms of Thanksgiving Day games and things of that sort in football. I think once you get the kids out there wanting to play, they're going to want to compete. So I don't think that not having a tournament or state playoffs, yeah, that's true, it's a big deal. But I think for some kids it means a lot for their senior year. For some, it's a matter of pride. For others, it's a way to kind of promote themselves in terms of getting a scholarship, whether it's D1, D2, D3, or JUCO. So I think there's a lot of different reasons where kids will find a way to motivate themselves to want to get out on the basketball court and play games and compete.
Now, I'll throw this one at you as well. In terms of, the individual, if there was ever a year to maybe focus a little more on individual performances, this might be the year. I'll ask you to, go through, each of the divisions here. And if you have one player that, you wanted to say, watch out for this guy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the best player in the division, but if you have one player that you might say, hey, keep an eye on this guy, he's a rising star or what have you. I'll let you, if you want to start with the blue division or the gold or wherever you want to go. But a guy from each division that you look at, somebody to keep your eye on.
Well, I think there's probably, if you look at it in the gold division, there's probably a number of several key players. I would say, as far as teams go, it'd probably be Wardlaw, Timothy, Christian, Piscataway Tech, maybe Perth Amboy Tech. Specifically, as far as players, I would say Mackay Huey over at Wardlaw is one kid that's worth watching. Ronnie Berwin Jr. over at Timothy Christian, another. as far as maybe the blue division, I would say Drew Johnson over at Denellen. He's third on the all-time scoring list at Denellen. He recently committed to Penn State Brandywine. He's only about, let's say, about 62 points shy of equaling his brother's scoring mark at Denellen. I mean, David Johnson is now the second all-time leading scorer at school behind Tyjae Kelton, but that's a little bit of a sibling rivalry thing. I mean, David played over at Kutztown. He graduated from Denellen in 2015. He also played football there. So, I know Drew has probably played more games than his brother has at this point. And so I think, he's one kid to watch out for in that division. I would say Luke Schleck over at and maybe Dominic Schiappa over at Metuchen. There are two kids that are worth playing, although I'd say Jai Dreyer and Michael Piovoso are also two players that can score a lot for them. South Plainfield, Moshood Adibule is a pretty good player. Let me see if there's any. Oh, yes. Josh Liberato is another player for South Plainfield. You could say Jalen Thomas over at Denellen. There are quite a few in that division. I think the blue division with Carteret and Aquinas moving up, if you look at that division top to bottom, maybe with the exception of one or two teams, it should be pretty much more competitive in that division this year, top to bottom, than it has been in recent years. The white division, first you can look at Aquinas. Obviously, they have Jaquan Harris, who has, I think as of right now, he has 12 D1 offers. He's only a junior. Tristan Jeffries, a teammate of his, he's a senior at Aquinas. He transferred in last year from Gill St. Bernard's. He is already committed to Robert Morris, the Horizon League, formerly of the Northeastern Conference. They're out of the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. He's playing for them. He's another good player. And they also got a kid that transferred toward the end of last season, Josh Rivera, who was at Roselle Catholic, and he's now there. He's a 6'7" wing that they have. He's had offers from about 9 different schools. The most recent one was Drexel University of the Colonial Athletic Association. And then you got Colonia. Colonia's added, obviously you start out with, they got Jordan Durkat coming back this year. Ruben Reyes is another kid. They got JT Kroner, who's a pretty good baseball player. Didn't get a chance to play baseball last season because of the pandemic, but those three are back. They have a very good JV squad coming up. They also have added 4 transfers, including Savon Presley from Wardlaw. Malik Austin transferred in from Hudson Catholic. Mo Johnson transferred in from St. Joe's, and Mecky Johnson transferred in from St. Thomas Aquinas. But I would say if you look at that, it would probably be the 2 guys or 3 guys you'd probably really look at would be Jordan Durkak and the Presley kid from Wardlaw, and Austin, who transferred in from Hudson Catholic. Austin played for Carteret as a freshman a few years ago. He was on that Final Four team that lost to St. Joe's at the buzzer. And then if you look at the red division, you got Eli Barlow transferred in from Union Catholic over to St. Joe's. He's a guy you can watch out for. I think Miles Way could be another guy you probably watch for. Ethan Simmons at St. Joe's. South Brunswick's got Ty Murchison and CJ Mangrum, who basically sat out last year due to injury, and he was academically ineligible as well. They also have a number of other kids coming back from last year that came up from their JV squad. If you look at, say, Piscataway, I'd say Will Corley is a guy you probably want to watch for. Then probably if you look at North Brunswick, back to the white division, you got obviously Jabri Fitzpatrick and Donovan Crawford. Those are two guys that are probably going to be worth watching this year. If you look at, say, Woodbridge, Eden Ulovic is another kid that's probably worth watching. Sayreville, Danny Golashevsky. East Brunswick, they have a kid who's only a sophomore, Jalen Pachardo, who had 250 rebounds last year. He's a GMC Hoops Freshman of the Year. They also have a big kid, Devin Kennedy, who's a pretty good player. Monroe has got Chris Kobiarowski. I know they lost Andrew Turco to graduation last year, and a lot of people might not be thinking that they're going to be that good, but they have a very good senior class, and he is the crown jewel of that senior class, Chris Kobiarowski. He had 400 points and 450 points and about 225 rebounds last year. Then probably if you look at Old Bridge lost several key players. They also had Sean Williams' younger brother, Anthony Williams, transferred to St. Joe's, but they still have Lucas Grissett, Chris Wire, Peter Gamba. I think that's a pretty good trio that they got from that saw some good action from a year ago. New Brunswick has still got Josiah Brown, although they were hit hard by graduation, and they're moving up a division into the red. So, I mean, I don't know if I covered them all, but like about most of them. But yeah, I would probably say that there's so many players. I mean, we had maybe about 14, 15 kids that I know of as of right now that transferred in or around the county this off season. Obviously, with the pandemic, I guess a lot of kids were staying put. But then with Carteret and Perth Amboy closing, we could see some kids move to other schools if they are allowed to. That's basically off the top of my head, some kids that could be worth watching around the GMC this year, give or take a few.
Talking with Greg Machos of GMC Hoops as we look ahead to the high school basketball season for 2020-2021. You touched on it a little bit earlier there in your last comments about some of the teams that you're looking out for. Aquinas being at the top there. So do you feel like this is in a normal year this would be Aquinas's conference to win?
Actually, I kind of feel that. I know they have 3 D1 kids. If you look at Jeffries and Jaquan Harris and Rivera, between the 3 of them, I think they got 28 D1 offers or something like that. But I'm not really sure about what they have beyond their starting 5. Their starting 5 is probably the best starting 5. And obviously, if you throw in Jalen Jones coming off the bench for them, he's a North Brunswick native. Was our 6th man of the year last year. And then Jared Gardner is a kid who played football for them this year, transferred in last year to play basketball, but had a season-ending injury. So this is really his first year to play basketball. So I would think that would be their 7. But, beyond that, they're pretty young and inexperienced. They have 3 sophomores in their roster. Colonia with the 4 transfers, as well as a JV squad that lost only 1 game at the JV level a year ago and won the East Brunswick JV tournament. And the freshman team that reached the Final Four, as well as the 3 guys I mentioned earlier. Plus, they got Noah Taylor, who was on the all-freshman team last year, and Joshua Laremi, who was a football and basketball player. I think Colonia is a team that a lot of people, I think, have overlooked as far as could be number 1. They're very deep. They may not have necessarily all the D1 talent that Aquinas has, but I think a lot of people forgot that Colonia took Aquinas pretty much down to the last 4 or 5 minutes in the quarterfinal last year and only lost by 10. It was probably the toughest game Aquinas played in the whole tournament last year. Now, true, Colonia is losing Jimmy Frazier and Lorenzo Jackson and Brandon Wasserman, but they have an awful lot coming back and in terms of talent coming up from the lower levels. And several, 4 or 5 kids coming back from that team last year, which overachieved, by the way. And they have these 4 transfers. I think it's just a matter of getting all these kids to, gel together, and the chemistry, and finding a way to get the ball to everybody. If they can work that out, they are just as capable as anybody else, I think, in GMC to be the top dog if there was a conference tournament this year.
And then finally, this question a little bit, off the beaten path, if you will, but you've been covering GMC basketball for 20 plus years now. So my question to you is, in that time frame over the last 20 years, how have you seen high school basketball evolve? Maybe something you saw 20 years ago that you don't see today. How have you seen the high school game evolve?
I think the game has kind of evolved in the sense that you see more big kids that are playing on the perimeter now. I also think that one thing that's kind of aside from what you see on the court is obviously the issue with the kids transferring to, a lot of kids transferring to various schools, and sometimes multiple occasions over a span of a high school career. Another thing that I think that we kind of see is really the probably, I would say, if you look at it, the gold division has become, I think, a lot more competitive in the sense top to bottom within their division. I think the teams are better. I think there's better talent over there. I think the teams are better coached than they were back when I first started. Not to say that they're, challenging the upper echelons of the GMC, but I think in terms of the conference itself, I think the gold division has become better because there's more teams that have been added. I think when I first started doing this, there was only 6 teams in the gold division at the time. And now, last year, I think there were 9, and now there's like 8 if you take the 2 teams that on Highland Park and Denellen that moved up to the blue, and then adding Somerset Tech from outside the conference to be a new member of the league this year. So I think that's one thing. Obviously, the dominance of the non-public schools, not only in the GMC, but also statewide. That's another thing that really didn't happen the first few years. The last time we've had an all-public school final was the 05-06 tournament between Metuchen and Colonia. Ever since then, at least one of the non-public schools, whether it be St. Joe's or Aquinas, has been able to, or Cardinal McCarrick, has played in a GMC boys final. So that's another thing. And that's also, I think, related to the whole thing with the transfer issue. I would probably say that another thing that maybe is really the growth of some of the communities. For example, when I first started doing this, Monroe was basically a blue division school. Now they're a red division school. You could say that about South Brunswick, maybe, 30, 35 years ago, they were a Group 1 school. Now they're Group 4, Group 5 in football. New Brunswick, they were a school that was Group 2 when I first started doing this. Now they're Group 4, Group 5 in football, and now they're red division. I think that's another thing is the growth of some of the towns and some of the programs, I think, in the conference and also statewide. You look at the whole southern portion of Central Jersey. If you look at it in terms of just Somerset and Middlesex County, you look at Montgomery. Montgomery, when I was a junior in high school, they were a Group 1 school. Now they're Group 4. Hillsborough is Group 4 now. Like I said, South Brunswick and Monroe and even Old Bridge. Old Bridge now is merged. That's another thing. Old Bridge is a school that's really come on the scene in terms of boys basketball within the last 7-8 years. They had originally merged in 94, 95 academic year between Cedar Ridge and Madison Central. and they never had a 1,000 point scorer until the 2012-2013 season. And that was Jim McCumber's first year, where they had Sultan Aminu, who's now, I think he's been trying to get a professional contract somewhere over in Europe, but they've had, I think now, I'm pretty sure they have like 4 or 5 kids that were 1,000 point scorers. And that's all happened within the last 7-8 years of that program. And they've also contended for the GMC. They've had 2 or 3 semifinal berths. They've had numerous berths in the quarterfinals. Obviously, the game in the quarterfinals 2 years ago, very controversial. So, yeah, I would say that's another thing. And I would probably say that, and the fact that, the big thing with me, I think, more than anything, is that the kids are transferring a lot. You got a lot of kids moving around. It's hard to keep up. Obviously, basketball is more 24/7, 365 than it ever has been. I mean, when I first started doing this, it was, you had maybe one fall league and no spring leagues. Now you have several fall leagues and a spring league or 2 here and there. And obviously you have numerous team camps and showcases during the off season. You never really had that before. So yeah, I would say that's probably a lot of the changes that I would probably say right off the top of my head. As far as what's happened in the 20 years that we've been doing this.
He is Greg Machos of GMC Hoops. You can follow him on Twitter at GMC, as in Greater Middlesex Conference, GMC Hoops. You can follow him there, or you can follow him on Facebook, also GMC Hoops there as well. So, Greg, I know I'll probably...
we're on Instagram as well, at GMC Hoops, also on Instagram. So.
Very good.
To let you know.
Very good, very good. Yes, so don't forget the gram. But, Greg Machos, and nice enough to join us here for a little bit. So thank you, and I'm sure I'll see you around somewhere. And, good luck with everything you got going on this year.
Okay, thank you.